it came to deciding whose names went on the headstones. This particular occasion, we had just lost Jack Hardy, who was a dear friend, the first AD on I Want to Believe, on several Chris Carter episodics, and every Morgan and Wong show. We decided maybe it would be a good idea to start remembering some of our family. So we approached the families of both Jack and Kim Manners, who was a longtime and very loved and respected director from the X-Files. And if you look carefully throughout the series, you'll find the names of some other recently departed X-Files family as well.
Kim Manners, our director who passed away about 5 years ago, we were shooting a scene very late at night, and I guess we had lost our energy in some way, and this scene was about some rock from Mars, basically.
Quite possibly
and
from Mars.
He started yelling, "Rock from Mars, rock from Mars."
Ready? Okay. All right.
You mean Rock from Mars?
Rock from Mars, here we go. It's a monster, Scully. Plain
His shorthand to David and I when we were lagging in enthusiasm was to yell "Rock from Mars" at us. Basically just, goose it.
First thing we need to do, though, is check out this motel.
Okay.
We had to create taxidermy heads that were big enough for your face to go into, which is very difficult because animals' faces and human faces are not the same shape.
Fox heads are quite small. You couldn't fit a human head inside a fox head. So we cheated those. We made them as small as we could, but still big enough to allow Fox Mulder to pop his head in there.
When I read Darren's script involving David wearing the red Speedo, I was a little alarmed. I didn't really know actually that it was a thing that had already happened in the past. And then when I researched it and I saw David wearing a red Speedo, I thought, okay, well, that's a good start. I was just trying to find something that was the right color red because red's one of those colors on camera. And because the show does have a certain tone, I didn't want it to be fire engine red or something like that.
I don't feel great about that stuff because it takes acting into a realm of winking and meta or celebrity. I want the work to have integrity of its own. It's for the fans, really. But I'll do it. I'll do anything for Darren. I'll wear red underwear for Darren.
I had a discussion with David today, not just about the Speedo, but I guess what that stuff is that my episodes in particular were complete standalones. And yet, I put some references in there so that people who do watch the series will, in theory, get more out of it than someone watching for the first time, even though the main thing is that anyone watching the episode for the first time will enjoy it and get it.
Stoner.
Chick.
That's another example. People who don't know those characters from season 3, they don't need to. They're just kids getting high, whereas if you're familiar with the show, you go, oh, those are those characters from the cockroach episode.
That's some good crap. We're smoking cow shit. Methane. We're getting high off methane, right?
It was poop.
The second time.
You were licking frogs.
Yeah.
I didn't want to.
She didn't want to do it.
No.
20 years later, it comes as a bit of a surprise when you hear that these seemingly innocuous flips of characters that were very fortunate back then to do them, and to be asked to come back and do it again was like a real shock. I don't know if we are real drug-addicted degenerates now, or if we're just like we got a babysitter, it was like, let's get out. Maybe we're married now. Like, let's get out to the woods and let's huff some paint.
Oh, dude. Are you okay?
Yeah, I think so. So Camille has the X-File podcast, the X-Files Files, and he invited me on. I was only supposed to be on once. I ended up twice. And, he's a huge fan, but I think he's funny. I knew his work before I knew he was an X-File fan. It's kind of a small part, but I knew he would be in seventh heaven, and he was.
I wanted to not be too excited because I knew I had to do a good job. I was like, I can't be the worst part of the universe that I love the most.
Any sign of it?
Don't sneak up on a guy like that. The worst way this goes is like, this episode is great. That one guy who played Pasha was really horrible. Why was he smiling the whole time? Yeah. These people who were part of something so iconic and something that I loved so much that became such a part of the pop cultural zeitgeist, and then to talk to them years after that and still have them be as passionate about it. It's been really inspiring.
Sleepless.
Hi,
Jack. Nick Lee. He's in Vancouver.
He is?
Yeah, I haven't seen him.
Does he still have a fake arm?
You know what they
Oh,
did?
the tea,
They
the
would have
tea.
they painted his hand. They put a glove over his hand. They painted it. They didn't even give it a fake. He had to do it.
You had to just hold
He had to just hold it really still, and he'd be like, all pissed. He don't have my hand anymore.
I was just talking to them. Gillian didn't know that I was the one who hosted that show. David told her. She started talking about the show, and then she was like, why don't you record this? So I did. It was great. Very exciting. It was also very embarrassing.
David was like, I've listened to one episode. I listened to the episode he did with Darren Morgan. It's like, I was just really annoyed that he kept calling me Duchovny. He'd be like, oh yeah, Gillian did this, Chris did this, Mitch did this. Duchovny.
You know the way Darren talks, and it's just like he'd say, "Oh, Duchovny, you know Duchovny." I was like, well, why is he being so dismissive? I didn't get it. And I don't really care, and I know he's not, but Duchovny this and Duchovny that. Why can't I be David? Don't we know each other?
Here's my feeling. Because if I said things like, you know, so we're doing the scene, and then David came up to me, or if I said, okay, we're doing this, and then David said, it would sound like we were lovers or something. I meant it as like if he had a nickname. When I was a kid, we always called each other by their last names. So it was a thing of affection.
When you think I should turn to take your picture, you should say my name.
2 steps back.
Sure.
Your land.
Got it.
You know when you're close to it.
Ah! I heard a noise over there, so I ran over here.
Darren conflates Duchovny with Mulder, you know, and I think he really doesn't like Mulder very much. He likes to poke fun at Mulder and to kind of idealize Scully. His tone is like, you know, Scully is immortal and disarming suspects and, you know, having a drink by the time I get there. And Mulder's dropping his gun and an idiot and character assassination, all these things.
What is that?
You know, the Mulder that is running along in a truck stop trying to get a picture of a monster and not pulling his gun and taking pictures of a guy in a porta potty. That's not the Mulder of the first episode. Darren's a funny writer, so you really want to honor that, but you can't all of a sudden be playing Inspector Clouseau, which is kind of how he likes to write Mulder, without the accent.
This me.
But this one has a lot of heart in it. You know, Darren seems to have a softer spot for Mulder than he has in the past. At the end, Mulder gets to see what he wants to see. He gets to be reinvigorated.
I'm glad to have met you.
Likewise. Very nice.
I'm interested in the idea of the recruiting of people by Muslim extremist groups, and that while there are people's sons and daughters being enlisted, we don't think much about their parents and what they must think, and the idea that if you're going to become a terrorist or a suicide bomber, that your parent gave you life and you are using that life for something that is heinous in my mind. It has a homegrown terrorist event, much like the bombing of an art gallery in Texas in the last year.
For the opening sequence of Babylon, when we all read the script, it sort of read as one continuous shot. There's a lot of collaboration between the stunt department, the special effects department, and visual effects.
It was quite a big day. I believe we had 25 stunt people inside the building, around the building.
Those people seem like they're hustling in there now. Everyone's got to be going at a natural pace.
You don't actually have to put the people within the explosion in the jeopardy. You can shoot it in elements.
So the first plate is our performance plate. They go in, we have some people moving out, and we have some people crossing camera. That's our performance.
We have something else in that plate, too. We have a stunt in that plate.
The stunt coordinator did the choreography of everybody moving in front of the art gallery and then had them just sort of jump out of the way as if they're being hit by a blast wave. And then from there, they're actually on cables and they're being projected away from the explosion. And then special effects gets involved, pull out all the people and rigs for the explosion.
We're definitely going to be having some shock to this. Large mortars with big charges firing out huge amounts of debris, which include balsa wood, dust, pieces of clothing, shoes, handbags. It also projects the glass, so nobody can be in the immediate area of the explosion.
The idea of the explosion is that it sends out a debris ball that would wipe out the frame, and that would allow us to transition to the aftermath shot.
It's quiet for a moment. You see smoke billowing, the sirens begin, the screaming starts, and people come running out on fire.
Okay, so let's get everyone in position.
Because I had 5 or 6 stunt people fully engulfed on fire, that takes a lot of timing and fueling when they come out, and it's dangerous. You have to be methodical and slow about how you do that.
Here, go in and come flat out. Get that mask. You hot, Scott? You okay? Safe on what? Safe on 2. Safe on 5.
It was horrifying and very realistic. And it's always been that way with X-Files. Even though there's monsters and aliens and all that, Chris always wants it to be that could happen.
All right, Sherry, and you're hot under the collar from the get-go here. And action!
Using artwork to desecrate the prophet of someone else's religion just incites fanatical terror.
It's just a painting.
Special Agent Mulder. I play Special Agent Kid Miller, named after David Duchovny's real son, not Mulder's son.
You think anyone takes the X-Files seriously? That's why they got them stuck down in that basement office. I pity that poor Agent Scully.
Miller and Einstein, to simplify it or oversimplify it, we had to look for a young Mulder and young Scully. We were really lucky to find 2 people who I think sort of embody the characters and came and did the most amazing work.
Maybe he values her open mind.
Maybe she challenges his BS.
When I say that these are Mulder and Scully-esque characters, they are far from David and far from Gillian, but the starting off place.
Thank you.
Come on in, it's open.
First day of shooting, my first day of shooting on X-Files was also Lauren, who plays Agent Einstein's first day.
You're Special Agent Einstein?
I claim a distant relation, if that's what you're referring to.
So we just got there and we were trying to figure out what the history might be, and we figured we'd, maybe been partners for about a year or so.
I don't suppose you're a profiler obsessed with the obsessive stuff?
That's my area. She doesn't really know.
We figured we were just getting to that tipping point where you're comfortable enough to correct the other person and go after them, but you're still uncomfortable enough that you're feeling it out. So I think we had a good level of trust.
He seemed like a bright young man.
T. Golden Miller. Oh.
So, Agent Einstein. Agent Mulder.
Agent Einstein.
I feel like this is a character who has no hobbies or interests outside of work. That Einstein feels a strong moral obligation to work as hard as possible, which maybe makes her come off a little bit abrasive at times. But I feel like it's because of her earnest searching.
I'll give you 2 minutes, Agent Mulder, and then I'm due back on Earth.
Babylon is a very ambitious episode in terms of telling a story that they've never told before on the X-Files. And I have to say I was nervous about it. When Chris first pitched me the idea, I wasn't sure, and I told him that.
Just like all those immigrant groups coming
Just
over here.
because the first thing I heard about the script was Mulder's gonna do mushrooms. I didn't know how that would look.
Well, Chris, he's never second-guessing himself in terms of story or tone. And that's a great strength, because I think a director's greatest strength is setting a tone. Although there's an introduction of what I would call more of a Darren Morgan tone in the middle of a Chris Carter episode. So it's going to be interesting to see how we quite navigate this. It's a heavy story, and in the middle you've got this Busby Berkeley thing happening.
He's been rehearsing very hard every day for that dance sequence. I think it'll be fun for David to do. It'll be fun for the audience to see.
Now, I'm from Paris, Texas, and I never saw that before.
Are we high-fiving people?
High five.
Yes.
Yes.
All right.
The answer to the high five is yes.
Joel Ransom, the director of photography, had ideas about elevating David through his mushroom trip, giving him a floating quality. So we filmed him on a kind of floating dolly, a trolley. It required David to mime walking and to do it with a really kind of goofy smile on his face. So it was a chance for him to, I think, do something that he had never done through the run of the X-Files, which was really the reason to come back and do these episodes, is to do original work. And this is something that I think no one has seen and no one maybe even expected to ever see.
That was very funny.
You gotta trust the director and do different kind of levels of stoned or self-consciousness or abandon. When they cut it together, they build some kind of momentum to it that makes emotional sense. I'm hoping that that's what happens.
I went to David early on and I said, how would you consider dancing in the episode? And I referenced Christopher Walken dancing to Fatboy Slim, which I have always loved, and that was a much more sort of free-form dance routine. I chose something that actually had a little less free-form, which was line dancing. Because the episode takes place in Texas, it makes most sense to do this to country western music.
Well, I hope I can dance well enough to make it look good. It's nothing big that I'm doing, but you know, it is written that he's an amazing dancer. I wouldn't say that I'm an amazing dancer, and I don't know how I can become one in a week. I want to be able to do a couple things well enough so that you can cut around me to make it look like I'm pretty good.
Dave, you're up.
Really Toledo.
The look on your face. Perfect.
Because David is so athletic, so he picks up very quickly, and he's the one that called a lot of the rehearsals. I was very happy with his progress, but he wanted to make sure that he had it right every single shot, whether it was a new lift with a girl, a new floor routine, a new dance move.
We'll just do the first part, then we'll do the lifts.
We'll do the first part until the backflip. So we'll stop, we'll do the backflips.
What is the backflip? I find that kind of fun to try to learn things that I don't know and trying to figure out how we can do this without embarrassing ourselves completely. But, you know, Chris is a good director. He knows how to cut away.
Have fun!
So let's just try that a little bit slow. We're just gonna move one step at a time. 5, 6, great, fine, and 1, 2, just slow, slower, and 5, 6, 7, 8. Knee comes up, he does a little shimmy. Hot girl comes in and snakes back. Yeah, good girl, Michael Jackson. Oh, little Pulp Fiction. Hands on the buckle, check it out. Excellent. I loved that they wanted Mulder to break out and just kind of give a dance sequence with a little bit of Michael Jackson, Pulp Fiction, a little Van Halen kick. I try to come with little bits of choreography that he could relate to that weren't exactly choreographed. I just wanted him to be himself, be like he was when he's on stage with his band. And when things came out like the Mick Jagger, you know, when he purses his lips and, you know, does this, that's actually all David. All I did was cue up an order for him. Honestly, I kind of felt like the mama hen watching their student shine.
Well, there is a front flip that I will not be doing. So I think I just have to go like that. That'll be my front flip. And then some gymnastics guy will flip, and then I will be there again.
He had worked hard with the choreographer, learned the moves, and did them beautifully, so I wanted to make sure that that was what I captured. If you're a fan of The X-Files, you know the characters, the lone gunman, who spun off into their own show so long ago and who died, apparently.
So girls, don't be afraid. Touch the merchandise.
Touch me.
In that mushroom trip.
We're part of the horrible things that he sees.
Exactly. Part of his deep psychic imagination, his longing.
It's like altered states, but with us.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. You've heard the song, basically lots of butts in your face.
What do you know about the hotel?
I know nothing.
He knows nothing. I just watched the video yesterday. So I thought there'd had to be some sort of feminist twist that somewhere to ironically underplay how over the top
I think
it was.
we would argue that, in fact, by their freely expressing their sexuality, it is, in fact, the most free women you will ever see.
So it's so many layers of sexism that it actually transmits.
It comes out the other side.
Yeah, it comes out the other side. It's a totally
Non-sexist.
female positive rock video.
It should be in the
experience.
Pride Parade, probably.
Pretty good, but we're gonna do it again.
This episode is about extremes and extremists. So I was looking for sort of extremes of whatever I was doing to heighten the drama and to play the crazy path that this episode takes.
And action.
Agent Mulder?
Where's your hat?
So I was talking to Chris. He said, well, you know, there's a thing I like that we haven't done in X-Files in all these years. Has to do with sound.
He wrote that on the palm of his hand before he died.
Founder's mutation.
I had actually heard of something called, I think it was called misophonia, which is where you're affected by noises and maybe even sounds that other people can't hear. Jim kind of liked that idea and did his own take on it.
God, anyone hear that? We had to be very careful about how long we can have this tone.
Sound.
Because I really felt like we're in danger of causing an audience so much discomfort that they would actually change the channels.
I can't hear you.
When we first put in sound effects, we put in a high-pitched sound, but we also put in a lot of other things, throbbing, heartbeat. But when we got some things from Terry Couturier, the sound editor, he gave us some very strong sounds, and both my assistant and I got tinnitus. I thought, how are you gonna have a show on television that destroys people's hearing?
Hey, Mark.
My effort to inject a little bit of horror into the show was to say that Dr. Goldman, who in using alien DNA, is not successful all the time, and that in mix and matching the DNA from different species, he's created some horrible mutations.
Epidermal dysplasia. Working with children, we talked about how important it is to make sure that the kids are in the makeup chair as little time as possible. So something like this would take like 30 seconds for the kid to get into. Something like this, we cut the front of it so the kid can just slip her leg inside of there very quickly. This is the blob character. It was designed with a flat top so that it could sit on a tabletop. And on the back of there, the actor would put his head into here. Then we pulled his hair out over the top and addressed and got rid of this unsightly edge right here.
You're a trooper.
Because we saw them for such a short period of time, it was important that when we did see them as the camera panned by the rooms, it was very brief, but we got the gist of the horror that was to be presented.
Adam, I'm your mom. I'm gonna take you home. David and I had a scene with the mother of one of the children who was potentially hospitalized and Founder's mutation. And we're sitting at a table talking to this potentially crazy woman who has her lunch tray in front of her. And at one point, she picks up her apple and lobs it across the room at a cat.
You don't like cats?
Not that one. That one only comes when you're about to die.
She did great on the first take. And so the camera is between David and I and on her for her close-up. The second take, she hits the matte box camera and I think broke a filter.
Killed a cat.
No, I didn't. Did I?
Third take, she lobs it into my chest. Oh my God. Point blank range, literally 3 feet in front of me. I mean, like throwing a baseball at a baseball bat into my chest.
Right in the boob. Oh my God, apple in the boob.
I think I went like that, and then started laughing hysterically because there was nothing else to do. It was so absurd. It was funny. Yeah, that's my story of the apple.
Can I try to catch it just once? Cat-like reflexes. Kung fu. Do you miss your daughter?
Molly. She fell in the pool.
I've had that crazy image in my head for a long time, which was a mom discovers that her toddler had wandered off and finds her in the pool, like dead. She jumps in, and to her surprise, her child is actually breathing in the water. Good. Okay. Good. Are there 2-year-olds that can be underwater?
James, in our meeting, everybody was like, we'll never get a baby to do that. It has to be all visual effects or a puppet. And he was like, come on, guys, can't we figure this out?
Yeah, I mean, it could be like CG baby, CG water.
Invalid choice.
Silly me spoke up and said, I don't see any reason why we can't find a little toddler or baby that could go under the water. Don't they teach babies how to swim at 10 months? So suddenly James said, Melissa's gonna find us a baby. Well, I'm up for a challenge. Let's find a baby that's been in the water since birth. So we had sort of an audition with some of my stunt friends' children, so they understand the business and understand that it's all done safely and methodically.
Our cameraman is underneath, looking up. When he comes up towards her, she just opens her eyes and smiles at him.
We had to find a couple of babies that would actually stay under the water long enough and be able to open their eyes and smile, but not hold their breath and not move around.
No, here. She's gonna go this way.
Little ones tend to float to the top because babies are buoyant. And I didn't want to weight the baby down. It's just cruel. So I would go down with them and hold them. And as soon as they would try to swim to the top, I'd just push them up to the top. They were amazing. You find one little rock star swimming baby in 100 of them.
That's really great. Hey, we got it.
Hey, Mark.
Don't step on it.
Don't step on it. Don't step on it.
Here you go. He's hustling. You want it?
Yeah. William, come here. I'm gonna read you a story about butterflies.
Well, the toddler scene is basically Scully reading to her son after he's taken a bath. And it's a moment that I think all parents can relate to. It's the sweetest moment of the day, really, because everybody's relaxed and the baby smells great. And in the scene, Scully is reading a pop-up book of butterflies, and from caterpillars, come great things, basically. And don't be afraid of change.
What's
Daddy's
that?
over there.
Yeah.
Daddy's over there.
Yeah, he is. And lo and behold, the 2-year-old was not playing ball and would not sit on my lap and look at this butterfly book, but wanted to play with the blocks the whole time. Just a minute?
I cast a little baby that was too rambunctious. I think he wouldn't really allow Gillian to read to him.
Oh, you're such a big boy. At one point, the little boy said mommy, not referring to me, but thinking about his mom. You ready? So I think what we ended up getting was perhaps some sweet footage of just Scully interacting with a 2-year-old.
Go see Daddy.
Should we go visit Fox?
We wanted to explore the problem of William. It plays in almost every episode, some mention of it, but beyond that, we have really just hearkened to William and not dealt with him in any kind of filmic way.
I always call The Last Temptation Mulder and Scully because they questioned, was this worth it? Should I have just been a mother? In Jim's episode, you actually see that from Mulder and Scully. So I think that the overarching connector is, was this life that we chose to investigate this stuff worth it?
The most interesting thing to me is, as a parent, I have 3 kids, is imagining what your life would be without, in my case, without the kids, but in Mulder and Scully's case, what your life would be if you had raised the child.
Yeah.
He's got a little hair just right across, overlapping his eyelash.
You're so good at everybody thinking you're a boy. You're such a good actor.
The daydream sequences, for me, always start in a way that is beautiful and sweet and what you imagine fantasy raising your kids would be, But for Mulder and Scully, because the whole reason to have left their child was based on fear, their dreams always turn into a nightmare.
What's happening to me?
William is the child that Scully had while we were together. It could be mine, it could be an alien, I don't know. It's my child, I think. Mulder would live his life as if that was his child. We had to give the child up. An episode I think I directed. As far as I know, he's living as some other child in the Midwest. But there's guilt, definitely, for the parents, especially for the mom, even if it was for its own safety.
Scully, who knows that William has special powers, She's always, you know, I think fantasized that he's grown up on a farm and he's safe and he's healthy and he's loved. And after seeing some of these children who are locked up and tested on a regular basis, all of a sudden she's wondering whether that could also be William's fate. Do you ever think about William?
I feel like I've had to put that behind me.
In the script, as a way to deflect Scully, Mulder says, I put it behind me. And David wanted to add the words, yes, of course I do, but I had to put it behind me.
Of course I do.
I think that was a way for Mulder to express how he felt without going to the place that he knew Scully was going.
Can I have another one, please?
Lots of fear about almost asking a question and what he's going to say. You're just afraid to articulate.
You know what I mean? The case hinges on Mulder coming to realize that he's really investigating the happenstance of his own child.
All we can do, Scully, is pull the thread.
Mulder has him on weekends or whatever at his house. Is that correct?
Well, this is all bullshit, right?
What
Oh,
I'm
sorry.
getting at
What are you
is
getting
both of them have some place to live, and the some place to live that Mulder has
It's different
is
than-
definitely not chaotic.
It's not chaotic in this world.
So Mulder has his own fantasy view of himself.
Right.
Okay, gotcha. Good. I think what was in Jim Wong's head is to try and convey that although they were apart, they both had parallel feelings about this young child. So we came up with the idea of blending Mulder's environment into a fantasy room with a similar fantasy from Scully's place, where both sets actually came together as one.
I actually went back to look at the show that Glenn and I wrote, where we showed how Samantha was abducted, or at least Mulder's version of it.
Dad!
No!
I wanted to kind of evoke the same shot, so to
Told you
speak,
not to swing in the room.
increase Mulder's angst. In a way, it's a horrible idea that you don't know what happened to your sister, or you don't know what happened to your son. It can impact a person in a very negative way. You know, it can destroy your life, really.
My name is Dana Catherine Scully. I am a special agent with the Federal Bureau of Investigation.
I have these two mythology episodes. They bookend the series. Mulder's struggle is with his belief in the fact that the government is not telling us everything about the existence of extraterrestrials. And Scully's struggle has always been with science, and the science as it relates to that core belief of Mulder's. They are two discrete and interesting struggles, but I think together they really form a kind of heart of the show.
That was my favorite one.
Thank you.
Genuinely my favorite one.
Someone who was very important to the creation of the mythology was a scientist named Ann Simon. She teaches at the University of Maryland, and she's a virologist.
You all look good. Here we go.
She had an interesting idea, which I credited her and her colleague Margaret Fear on.
The Spartan virus removes the adenosine deaminase gene from your DNA, remove the ADA gene, and
The science is all important in that episode. It would be much less powerful without it.
a process called CRISPR-Cas.
CRISPR-Cas9.
It is cutting-edge science. Elements in it would have been futuristic during the original series.
Adenosine deaminase.
Adenosine deaminase, correct.
Sometimes my heart sinks when I see pages like that, and sometimes I find it wonderfully challenging and have a ball with it. Maybe they knew we'd attempt to find a weapon, no, a cure. Yeah, that. Sorry. I cannot predict how my brain is going to handle dialogue on any given day. We can defeat the Spartan virus. Spartan virus?
Correct? Okay. By creating.
It has nothing to do with how much I work on a scene. There's no rhyme or reason. It's the story of my life as an actor.
We don't need to poke anybody anymore. I think we just...
We poked enough.
You have to take into consideration that some of the science is beyond the actor, but not beyond the character.
So I can't just dang it with one hand.
A pancake.
When they read a scene and they say, I don't understand this, there's a reason for that, because they have to play the emotion of the scene, not just the words. And so you have to catch the actor up on what the science is and how it makes sense to the larger picture.
The doctors are all getting sick. If there is anything you can do.
You're out of luck. Sorry, babe.
Chateau de Bloody, yeah?
What's happening with this?
When we come closer, it's gonna fill with my blood.
Is there a word in your lines where you think might be something said? Go, go, blood man, go? No. Let's go.
Go, go, gadget.
It's gonna take an eternity.
This could go into episode 7.
The sort of mythical 7th episode was written by myself and a really talented writer named Brad Fulmer that looked like it was going to happen. It almost happened. Everybody had approved it. It was almost announced. And then a scheduling thing made it impossible at the 11th hour. So that was kind of a bummer. But it was a Monster of the Week episode, what I would call a nature-based monster. That's as much as I'll say.
Hello?
Agent Scully? Dana?
Yes, who is this?
Action Annabeth.
One of the nice things for me this episode is that I get to work with Bill, the cigarette smoking man. And that's actually a nice little tie-in because in my first episode on the show, I smoked Morley's. I was quitting.
Agent Reyes. How badly I want a cigarette.
Let's go back to 1.
She has a character choice to make, and it is a big choice. You know, we can't judge our characters, but I don't know if she makes the right decision. I think ultimately, as it plays out, perhaps she is making a selfish decision, a survival decision. And, you know, when you think about what you would do, what would you do if the human race is about to be depopulated by a virus?
So this whole piece was designed as a one-piece prosthetic that I could just slick back Bill's hair and then put it on all in one shot. He walks the set wearing the prosthetic, and when he's lying in the bed, I just go up to him and put this on like that.
With all this stuff on, you know, you wonder how you could perform it all. Because obviously one's face is part of one's tool. I think they hear vocally the nuance in the voice. Please, come in. Later, I'm in my own home, but I have a new prosthetic which does a certain reveal, which I think if you have a sensitive stomach, you may not want to watch.
Cigarette smoking man grabs his nose and he clicks off his nose. Then we reveal a hollow inside of the head.
Most makeup appliance, you're adding something to the actor, so you're building something up. In this particular case, we wanted to remove mass. Because I think it'd be so cool to remove that and then have the eye still be standing there. Bill would build the practical sort of Phantom of the Opera mask and reveal an actor covered with tracking marks. The design of it was practical in nature, meaning that somebody sculpted that, painted that, we scanned that, and then tracked it into the actor's performance. So hopefully it feels more organic as opposed to just doing a digital effect on an actor.
Wish Scully was here. See what a monster you've become.
I'm all she'll have left.
And action. Chris's words were 2 warriors fight to the death. If you say that to a stunt coordinator, you're gonna get a fight to the death. I sent video of the rehearsal and the choreography to David, and David said, I feel like the book's silly. I originally choreographed Mulder choking, and he grabs a large hardcover book, and he throat strikes him. A hardcover book would do a lot of damage, especially if you hit a windpipe. And he goes, I believe you, but I don't think it'll play. His other note was, I wouldn't get that close range. I wouldn't give him that opportunity to be able to disarm me. So we integrated the front door to help disarm Mulder's weapon.
Please. Everybody okay?
And David brought his all. We broke it up into pieces so that he could learn that piece, shoot that, move on, teach him that piece, shoot that.
One more.
David and Gillian are very busy, so we have to get a lot of things done in a short amount of time.
And take control of that weapon right away as soon as you land.
Well, wait, I mean, how am I going to control it? We're down here. I've got to push up. I can't control it till I get up here. Because I got to use my hands to push up.
And we've been, 6 days a week, full on, trying to make this happen.
Sandwich against your chest.
It's been a blast and challenging in all aspects.
Exactly. Episode 6 is a very big episode, and you could just hear in the production meeting sort of how exhausted everybody was at that point. Anytime you're doing what I would call an apocalyptic landscape, it's a lot of work.
right?
Chris had written in that he wanted to basically close down a bridge. So, you know, you just saw it in the production meeting. Everybody's sort of just going, oh my God, how are we gonna do this? To their credit, they did it. They figured out how to find a bridge that we could close down for a whole night.
It was a logistical nightmare for everyone involved. I bet we had a dozen meetings about just the work on this night because it required us to put 200 cars stalled on that roadway, get them on and off in the limited amount of time that we had. That required us to use drones, required us to use special cranes.
We only have a limited amount of time.
10 to 6, basically, right?
10 to 6.
I have to say, Grace Gilroy, hats off to her. Mark Freeborn, the production designer, Joel Ransom, everyone worked together before the city pulled the plug on us. It was still, for me, an amazing night that we even pulled it off.
That's a wrap on Mitch, you guys.
It seems like it's the culmination of many things and maybe even many years of planning and thinking about these ideas. So it seems like something is coming to fruition.
We are getting our first reports of deaths.
If this comes back for another 6 episodes next year, I will show up even if I'm not in the show. My character, Tad O'Malley, will have a spin-off, Tad Files.
Now up here, we go out with a whimper.
When I read the script for episode 6, and I got to this end, which is this massive cliffhanger, and after I threw my computer across the wall, no, I didn't do that, it was a big surprise to me. And I think the cliffhanger is going to be a huge surprise to the audiences as well. But they shouldn't be too surprised because Chris has done cliffhangers on the previous seasons. But I'd be very, very curious to see how people react. I wish I could be in everyone's homes when it airs.
Is William up there?
He might be with his stem cells.
You remember how you got
Just
drawn
pour
up?
them down.
He gets drawn down.
William, are you there?
I'm so pumped to be a part of that final scene. I don't know who makes it out. I don't know if there is something to be made out from. I mean, all signs point to more, right?
It might provide closure if we all get sucked up by the spaceship. Maybe, depending on how the series cuts together by January, they could always add something in post, which is a CGI image of a bunch of bodies exploding on their way up into the spaceship. That would be one ending, but I don't know the answer to that one.
I don't really know where we're ending because I don't know what the plans are for the future. I mean, it's not a hard end. Nobody has died, I don't think, unless it's a change for the world. You know, the world could be ending, so it just really depends on the stories. Depends on what stories we still feel that we can tell.
Julie, I'm so sorry. It's like the woman in the insane asylum.
That's David's last shot of the show. Visual 51, Peter, take 2.
Good. Checking that. Thank you, everybody. That will be a season wrap on X-Files.
I called cut for the last time just before sunup. The clock was ticking. We were scurried off the bridge, and that was it. We were done. All I can tell you is we did our best, and we never wanted the quality to lapse. In putting these 6 episodes together, we began with that idea that the X-Files still has life in it. And if we were successful and did good work, that there would be more good work to come.